As a Youthquake manga fan, I can safely say there are two particular right lines that I actually want to see it being made properly into a deck form from the manga to the actual card game. The first one being Divine Knights because I like my Zero Knights, especially that is technically their successor. And the second one is actually the Buddha. Yes, not even a single Dusted deck in that manga has interested me. But to be fair, there is not one proper right line there yet. Salt! But if there is one thing I am interested to see is how they're gonna handle Stauhihaja as a proper right line in the standard. And I think Bushiroad has cooked a decent base to actually play around, but the deck still have a few glaring issues that I'll be covering about today. So let's start off with the right line, and there's nothing much to say about the starter except for banana. Banana. Sorry for return to primates for a moment, but let's talk properly to the first part of the right line, and that is Keyman Lamp. Lamp has two skills where the first skill is a typical when rolled upon by the grade 2 skill, where this time round you can check top 7 card of your deck, choose up to one grade 3 or greater card with Stauhihaja in its name or a Sutra card, add it to your hand and then shuffle your deck, and of course you have to review it. This is a very nice and simple search skill, and I can safely say the target is big enough to actually hit like 90% of the time. However, Lamp also have additional skill where at the end of your turn as a regard, if you play Sutra order this turn, you may retire this unit to fetch one Stauhihaja unit from your drop zone back to your hand. This is nice because this allows you to discard the grade 3 early and then fetch it back later on as long as you can play the Sutra card. Unfortunately, even though the skill is pretty damn strong, I don't see myself using it often, and that is because of one of the limitations that the deck does have.
Understandable.
But before discussing about that, let's talk about the partner in crime of the right line, and that is Luminary Gamka, the grade 2 of the right line. This card also have two skills where when rolled upon by Stauhihaja, you can Soul Blast one, search for one Sutra card and add it to your hand. Of course, you have to review it. And then he also has ability where when placed on Rega Circle and you have played Sutra this turn, you can Soul Charge one and have this unit plus 5k until end of turn. Surprisingly enough, you're gonna be using the second skill quite often in some of the games due to, like I said before, the limitation of this deck. But who really give a damn about the grade 2, as we have to talk about the grade 3, the Buddha himself, Dignitary Staja. This card has 3 skills which kind of evolve around you playing Sutra, where the first skill is a constant that gives you an entire front row additional 5k if you have played Sutra this turn and your opponent is grade 3 or greater. And then the second skill allows you to play more normal order per turn as long as your opponent is grade 3 or greater, and you can only play Sutra as additional order to play this turn. And then the third skill that tied everything together, when this unit attack counter blast 1, for each Sutra that was activated this turn, you can choose one of your record and stand it.
Yes, I like that.
This means that you can pull a little bit like Resayo playstyle, where you can go up to 5 attack or you can go to 4 full attacks. And I think this is nice in itself, especially considering the fact that a lot of support revolving Stauhihaja actually gains a power themselves. But before we get into those support, let's talk about Sutra card, which is the important component of the deck, and I can safely say the most important one. These are the grade 3 order cards that can only be played if your Vanguard is Stauhihaja, and each of them can only be played once per turn, like a legit hard once per turn. But the skills are far from being weak, and I feel there is a reason why it has to have a hard once per turn clause. As starting off with Principle of Non-Self, this Sutra has ability where you can call grade 3 or less card from your drop and give that unit additional 5k. But if your opponent Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you can give a brand new skill to that unit where once per turn, if that unit stands by a card effect, you can get additional crit until end of turn. This is actually really good because it literally just tied condensation with Nectar of Sensualization in a single order. Of course, you're not getting as much power compared to the Nectar of Sensualization, but the fact that it is 2 orders in one single order is actually really good. And just like I said earlier, a lot of Rega in this deck does gain its own power, making that additional crit actually threatening. But this is not the best out of the 2 Sutra we have, as we have Principle of Suffering, the main order that actually caused the MC from the Youthquake lost to this old man multiple times. So what kind of suffering you have to deal with? Well, it's not exactly that you have to deal with it, but it's your opponent as their Vanguard lose 3k until end of their turn. And on top of that, if you have already played Sutra order this turn, you can pay Soul Blast 2 additionally to get additional draw and additional ability to your opponent, where all of their Vanguard drive -1 until end of your opponent next turn.
It's amazing.
This is the bread and butter of Stauhihaja, as this is the most important part of the deck. The ability for the deck to actually disrupt your opponent in the worst way possible, and that is through their drive checks. Of course, there is a few situations where this card doesn't really work the way you intended, like for example when you're up against Duisburg and they use Sequana, then this card drive -1 became null and void because the drive set to 1. So overall, I can safely say this deck main playstyle is to make sure that you play both non-self and suffering within the same turn to make sure that you can get the full benefit and disruption that this deck can pull for your opponent.
That was easy.
Now that we have talked about the Sutra extensively, let's talk about a specific support. There are 3 of them, and all of them more or less has something to do with a Sutra card. Starting off with Purchase Chorophorus. This card is essentially Prospector.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Like seriously, this is literally a Prospector for a Sutra card. So at the end of the battle, this unit attack or boost, you can put this unit into your soul, look at top 7 card for a Sutra card. So there's nothing much to say here, but the fact that this card doesn't really have a great restriction is really great, because that means that you can use it in the earlier part of the game, and trust me, you're gonna rely on those a little bit of the push you can get in the earlier part of the game. Next up, we have the double R from the set, and that is Hurtful Pompidilio. This card can gain additional 5k based on how many Sutra order you play during that turn, so it can be a base 23k unit on itself, and plus Stauhihaja skill, that's a 28k with our personal right. And then it has a very interesting defensive skill where when your Vanguard is being attacked by your opponent rearguard, you can retire this unit. You can decrease that attacking rearguard power equal to the original power that they have for the rest of that turn.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
This does sound a little bit weird because maximum power that this unit will be decreasing is 10 to 13k, depending on whether you are being attacked by the grade 2 or you're being attacked by the grade 3. But I would say this is not a bad counter against a freestanding rearguard. It is a decent skill to have, but it definitely kind of demands players' hand just a little bit to supplement the missing power. It still makes things a lot easier to guard regardless though. Overall, it's a decent card, but you're gonna be using this mainly as a beater, and you won't be using it all the time as well, especially considering a last card that we get for this deck support is Vibhaska the Leaper, the triple R of the set, and it has 2 abilities where, just like Pompidilio, it can gain 5k for every Sutra that was played this turn, and secondly, it is a Sutra searcher where when placed on Reika Circle, you can check top 7 card for a Sutra card, review it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. But if you fail to review a card by this effect, you can draw additional card. Like I said before in some of the videos, I rather have a refunded in cost rather than additional draw. But I do have to say the draw that this card can pull is very crucial. And that is a good place to talk about the good part and the bad part of this deck. The good part about this deck is that it has a good search synergy for its own unique order, and that is Sutra. And the Sutra itself is a very powerful order on its own, allowing you to get a lot of pressure on Rearguard side as well as a Vanguard pressure in the form of power menacing and drive minus. On top of that, I feel the deck recycle what's already come out of the deck really well, with Lamb help you to fetch back personal right, Kumka making sure that you have 2 soul to pay for the suffering, and overall I think the deck kind of work well as a well-oiled machine. The problem with that well-oiled machine is that you need that oil to work to begin with, and by that I mean key pieces. This deck biggest issue is the fact that it has a good recycle potential when it comes to fetching the basic things like a personal right, a Sutra card, but it does a poor job of recycling it back from drop zone to hand, and that includes both orders and rearguard. Fortunately enough, there is a solution that the deck can approach, which is Awina, which is a brand new support for the deck, and of course some cards like the Energy Cycler and Death Command Restraint does help you to recover from those disadvantages, but it is still disadvantage nonetheless, and it does hold back the deck quite a bit. And that's Stauhihaja. In my honest opinion, a very fun deck to play because it kind of mixes the ability of disruption well with filtering. And in all fairness, I think the only thing that the deck needs now is a proper way to kind of recycle card from your drop zone, or at least help you to super call more card from the deck or something. But that's my thoughts about it. What do you guys think about this bug Buddhas? Do leave down in the comments below. And yeah, that's all I have for today. Take care of yourself, and this is Mac Mechanic signing out.